Okay, so we're going to work through today the pre-approval briefing, so we can give you a flavour of what's to come and how we're going to work through the approval process. So this is delivered by the Lctd quality team, and the purpose of our session is to introduce the team to you so you know who we are, what we're going to be supporting you with, explain the approval process that we're actually going to be going through together. We're going to look at the learner journey so you understand each of the different stages that the learners are going to be working through and what we need to be doing at each of those stages. And then we're going to explore the learner management systems and what it's going to look like, how we're going to be using it. So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to that today, and then we'll go into it in a lot more detail as and when we get to that stage. So we'll be able to answer any questions at the end as we go through the presentation. So let's introduce our approval team then. So the Lctd approval team are quality assurance professionals, and we've been supporting new and developing existing centres for quite some time now. So you've got our full contact details on the screen there. And we're going to be providing you with all the support that you require as a centre startup. So we're going to be acting as your quality assurance leads. Larry's going to be your point of contact with regards to supplying us with all the necessary information and documents that we need. And our initial services are going to be to support you with setting up the learner management system. So we've actually done that, and that's what I'll take you through in a little bit. We're going to be supporting you with securing the centre approval from the awarding body. And we've got all the awarding body policies and paperwork and everything that you need all in place. So I'll show you how to access that shortly. And we're hoping to get a date from the external quality assurer to come in before the end of December so that we can actually get you approved and up and running. So that means that you can start recruiting now onto the level 3 and level 5 adult care qualifications. So as part of our services, we're also going to be providing the training. So the first one today on the pre-approval training process, and we'll be running team meetings and post-approval training and standardisation as we go through. So if you have any questions at any point, just check in with Larry and he'll be able to support you with those. Okay, so let's talk through the approval process then so you understand each of the different stages. So we've gone through the approval request, so that's been submitted to the awarding body, and we've submitted that application. So now we're at the stage of actually preparing the centre file. So that's gathering together all the supporting documentation that's required to gain the approval. So that will come under 4 different headings that I'm going to explain to you today around management systems, the resources we have in place to support the delivery, the actual delivery and assessment processes, and then quality assurance of the qualifications. So once we've done all of that and got it all together, we'll then submit that to the external quality assurer, so our EQA, and they'll be able to carry out a sample of all the evidence that we're providing and make sure that they're happy that we have everything in place. If there's anything that we're missing or more information that they require, they'll put together an action plan, and then we can work through that. And once they're satisfied that we have everything that they're looking for, then we'll get the centre approval. So I thought it'd be useful just to start with to talk through actually who are the stakeholders in the actual qualification delivery process. So who's actually involved at the different stages. So the key one obviously to start with is your awarding organisation. So we're going to be working with Innovate. So they're an awarding body that cover the care qualifications that we're looking to deliver. And I'll show you their website shortly. And all the qualifications that we'll be delivering have to be regulated by Ofqual. So Ofqual is the Office of Qualifications and Examinations Regulation. So they basically put the regulations in place to ensure the validity and safe delivery of qualifications, the examinations and the assessments throughout England. So they're that regulatory body. Now, The qualifications we're going to be delivering are on the RQF. So this is the Regulated Qualification Framework. So if you want to check at any point the qualifications that you're delivering to make sure that they are valid qualifications, then you can actually find those on the RQF website. So it's a government website, and I've brought it up here so that you can see it. And you can go on to gov.uk, find a regulated qualification, and you can then search for the qualifications. So you can make sure that anything you're delivering is actually on that RQF, so the Regulated Qualification Framework. And this is going to be particularly important if we start delivering using AEB, so Adult Education Budget funding, because they will only fund qualifications that are actually on this framework. So another stakeholder in the journey that you'll be going through is the JCQ. So that's the Joint Council for Qualifications. And the JCQ are basically a membership organisation that comprise the largest providers of qualifications in the UK. And the JCQ basically provide a single voice for its members on the issues of exam administration and, when appropriate, qualification and wider education policy. So for yourselves, it would be really useful to go to the JCQ website, so jcq.org.uk. And if you click on Exams Office, it will take you to their page with all the relevant policies and procedures on for running exams. So there are a few on here that are of particular interest. So that might be things around the access arrangements and reasonable adjustments that we need to make to be able to offer the qualifications to all of our learners. Particularly the things around appeals and malpractice. And you've also got the ICE, so the instructions for conducting examinations. So obviously this is going to be particularly important to make sure that we're compliant with all the regulatory requirements for running exams. The other one that will be useful is the exam room posters. So these are the posters that you have to display where any exams are taking place to ensure that no mobile phones or electronic recording equipment are actually being used and that the regulations are being followed. So this is quite a useful website with lots of information on that you can refer to for the running of the exams. So in addition to the RQF, the JCQ, the other stakeholder that's really important is Ofsted. Now, I'm sure you're very familiar with Ofsted from your own area of work, but for the delivery of the qualifications, they inspect all the education services and the skills of learners of all ages. So they inspect and regulate the services, not just for care, but also for training. So we need to be making sure that we're compliant with the quality requirements for Ofsted. And that's what we'll be taking you through and supporting you with. So those are our key stakeholders. So we spoke about the journey for approval, and that's going to start off with making sure that we have in place all the centre management systems that are required to actually help ensure that we have the structure in place to support that quality delivery that Ofsted and JCQ and so on are going to be looking for. So the sorts of information that we're going to be pulling together to share with the EQA, the External Quality Assurer for the awarding body, are going to be things such as an organisational chart, so we can identify who's going to be involved in the delivery of the qualifications, who's responsible for the registrations, administration, who the assessors and verifiers are going to be. And if needs be, then Lctd can support you with that initially whilst you're setting yourselves up. So we'll also look at providing the curriculum development plans for yourselves and the qualification guidance. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be using Innovate, which are the awarding body. So if I were to show you now Innovate's website, so I'll pull this one up here. So this is the awarding body website, so innovateawarding.org. and I'm going to leave the links in the presentation so that you can access these afterwards. If you go onto their website and click on qualifications, you'll be able to scroll down and search through all of their qualifications. So as you can see here, we can scroll down and we can find the different levels that they'll be offering and the different units that are available. So if we look for their qualifications list, you'll be able to see on here that under the care area, we can click on this and it will give us the different qualifications available in care. So if we were to click on, say, the level 3 diploma in adult care, which is one of the qualifications we'll be delivering, you can go in and find out more information about the qualification, and then you can click on specification and download the specifications for delivering this particular qualification. Likewise for the level 5 as well. So for yourselves, it's going to be important that you download these qualification guidance documents so you understand what you're delivering and what the requirements are. But as I say, we will be delivering standardisation on these as we go through as well. So that's all available for Innovate through this link here. And in addition, as part of the centre management systems, we're going to be putting together the centre policies, all the different aims and the procedures that need to be in place to deliver the qualifications. And it's important that your staff are going to be familiar with those before any delivery commences. Now, we've actually created these documents for you and we've uploaded those onto Laser, which is the learner management system. So I'll be showing you how to access those in just a moment. So that's the first stage of the approval process. We need to pull together all the centre management system documentation. We then need to make sure that we have all the resources in place. So for this, we're looking at ensuring we've got all the staff CVs that are going to be delivering on the qualification. And that will include any CPD logs and certificates. So making sure that their professional development is up to date and that we can evidence that they are current in their knowledge. And as part of this, we'll also need to ensure that we have all the relevant DBS checks as well to make sure that everything's in place as to where they're going to be working. In addition, we need to make sure that we have appropriate accommodation and equipment in place. So by that, I mean making sure that we have suitable rooms for training, or the online platforms that we're going to be using are going to be appropriate and suitable for the learners that are going to be accessing it. So we have the e-portfolio that I'll be showing you shortly, where your learners are going to be able to access their online learning. They're going to be able to upload their evidence and keep it all into one nice compact area so that things don't get lost. And it's going to be easy for the assessors, the internal and external verifiers, all to access that evidence for your learners. Additionally, under the resources section, we'll need to pull together any public and employee liability insurance certificates just to demonstrate that everything's covered and in place as it should be. So the third area we'll be looking at is the delivery and assessment. So we'll make sure that we have schemes of work and lesson plans in place for all the qualifications, that we have assessment plans that are going to reflect the ongoing assessment that will happen throughout the qualification. We'll need to provide an IQA sampling plan, which initially is going to be setting out how sampling will take place, and we'll need to demonstrate that that's held up to date at all times. We'll also be putting together induction packs for our learners, so that will help them understand exactly what they're enrolling onto, what the requirements are from their point of view, and then the essential policies and contact details they'll need to get in touch with the centre, with their assessors as they work through their qualifications. So that will be a nice little welcome pack for your learners that you can provide at induction to help them settle in and find out how to navigate through the systems and do all the essential things they need to do on their portfolio. So as your learner works through, they'll create an individual learning plan with their assessor. So this will document where they're starting from now, what prior knowledge and experience they already have, and how their learning is actually going to help develop their skills, what actually they need to be studying so that they can develop their knowledge and experience further. And it'll act as a nice tracker as they work throughout their learning. So the ILP will be enhanced by monthly reviews that will take place to create their work plans with their assessor, and then the quarterly progress reviews so that we can track how they're actually doing throughout their journey, making sure that they're on track and so on. So we'll have all the templates of that ready for you in the learner management system. And again, I'll show you that shortly. And then to start their journey, they're going to need a learner contract in place. So this is like a learning agreement, and it's going to be put in place so that the learner, their manager, and the centre will all sign up to this, so everyone knows what the requirements are up front, who's responsible for what, and what they're actually committing to as part of the qualification. So as we go through that learner journey and that induction process, we'll be checking on the learner's prior qualifications. And obviously, if they do have any prior experience or qualifications that will affect the qualification they're enrolling onto, then we'll do some checks around that. What maybe can already be mapped over into the qualification as evidence of prior learning or achievement, and we'll be maintaining that evidence as we go through. So also as part of the approval process, we'll need to demonstrate that we have safe and secure storage of materials and the records in place, so that we have everything maintained under GDPR, and that the paper-based files or records of our learners are kept securely locked away, and any electronic data is going to be stored in compliance with the appropriate regulations for data protection, and that we use secure passwords and encryption whenever we're sending anything with personal details in it. So again, don't worry about all of this. We'll make sure everything's in place, and we do plenty of training and support with you to get these things up and running and embedded. And the final section for this is around the exam regulations. So I've already mentioned, obviously, the JCQ regulations for exams, but it's also making sure that we're compliant with the individual awarding organisations' requirements. So any regulations for the conduct of external assessments or other elements that they have in place to ensure that the validity of the exams and assessment is upheld at all stages. So again, we'll be following up this with further training and standardisation as we move on. So the last stage is around quality assurance. So this is the evidence we'll be putting to the awarding body to demonstrate how we're going to be quality assuring the qualifications. So this might be evidence around the file checks that will be taking place, the portfolio checks that will happen throughout the learner's journey, and the formative and summative IQA. So IQA being the internal quality assurance of the qualifications. So we need to make sure that formative checking is taking place. So as the learner is going through the journey and evidence is being uploaded, we'll carry out checks throughout that journey rather than leaving it all to the final couple of weeks and doing summative only. So we'll make sure that there's that nice balance of formative and summative internal quality assurance taking place. And at the end, the IQA will do a final sample of the remaining evidence, make sure that the qualification requirements and standards have all been met, and that's the point at which we can ask the external awarding body to come in. So it's just making sure that we have all the underpinning policies, processes and strategies in place to demonstrate to the awarding body that we have that robust structure in place before we start the delivery. And as part of that, we will include evidence around standardisation meetings. So obviously today is our first one for the pre-approval process. But as we go through and your internal quality assurer actually carries out sampling, then we'll actually be able to identify any particular areas that we need to standardise to make sure that all assessors are working to the same standards, that we're carrying out processes in the same way and interpreting evidence equally, and that we're assessing to the same rigour across the board. So these standardisation meetings will happen regularly throughout the course of the delivery to make sure that we're all working in the same way and to the required standards. And it's a good opportunity to share good practice and understand what others are doing as they're working as well. So those are the key stages of the approval process and the types of evidence that we're going to need to be putting in place before we get that approval visit from the EQA. Now, normally the EQA, the external quality assurer, would come into our centres and actually meet us in person, see the premises. But obviously at this time, most of the checks are all happening remotely. So it will be probably a remote visit that we'll get from the EQA at Innovate, and we'll be liaising with you as to when that's going to happen and what evidence we need to be providing. So moving on then from the approval process, we can look at the individual learner journey. So this is where everything all starts to fall into place. So I've tried to here clearly identify the different stages of the learner journey and the different documentation that we'll need to be putting in place or key steps at each of these stages. So I know it's a little bit small to read on the screen, but I will be sharing these with you afterwards so you can look into this in more detail. But I'm going to talk you through the key stages now. So the first stage is the enrolment stage. So this is where you're going to be providing the initial advice and guidance to your learner about the qualification, how it's all going to work, what the commitments are, how the learning is going to take place, what sort of assessments they'll be actually embarking on. And this is where you would agree with your learner their start and end dates. So if they're happy to actually continue, you would then create the learner on Laser, which is our learner management system. So it's a nice, easy process to do, and I'll talk you through that in just a second. And this is where we can allocate the course to the learner so we know what they're actually going to be studying and working towards. So at this enrolment stage, we'll be scheduling that first progress review so everyone knows when the progress review points are going to take place and that they're in the diary in advance. So once the enrolment stage has taken place, we would then move on to the induction. So we would carry out an induction with the learner into using Laser for them to actually do their learning and to use it as an e-portfolio so they can upload their evidence for the qualification. So we would carry out a full induction into the qualification, the units that they're going to be studying, and the learner can complete their About You survey. So we find out a little bit more information about them at this stage. So this is when we can carry out any checks on their prior knowledge and learning, and we can assess whether that maps to any of the criteria in the qualification and therefore whether they would need to be assessed on it or not. Then we can move on to the learning stage and we can get into kind of the learning proper. So this is where we'd register the learner with the awarding body, and the learner would work through the online learning modules and complete the learning required to gain the underpinning knowledge. And where appropriate, your assessors are going to be carrying out any additional tutoring sessions to make sure that information relating to the units they're doing and pertinent to the individual learner is actually covered either in group sessions or one-to-one. And this is where we can make use of online technology to deliver group sessions, whether that be through Zoom, like something like this, or through other means as well. And there's a really useful option within the Laser system to upload any additional teaching resources into the library, so that if your tutor wants to enhance the teaching materials that are already built into the system, they can add to with any additional materials that they might have of their own. So I'll show you how easy and quick it is to upload that information into the library for their learners to access as they work through. So on a monthly basis, your assessors and your learners are going to be creating monthly work plans, and that's going to show exactly what the learner should be working on, and it will take them through how to actually complete elements of their learning or build that evidence for their portfolio. So as they work through, obviously in their job, they might be pulling together evidence for their portfolio, or that might come from completing some of the learning materials as well through their course. So they'll be going through, they'll be doing their learning, and then quarterly, we'll be carrying out the progress reviews. So before the first progress review, your learner can complete the ongoing survey, and that will give feedback about how they're finding the learning, how they're finding using the portfolio, and how they're generating the evidence. So that will give additional information for the assessor and the learner to discuss as part of that progress review. And that progress review will also be carried out in conjunction with the learner's manager, so that the employer has full insight into the progress the learners are making and how they're actually progressing with developing the evidence and the skills and the knowledge that they require. And that means that if they need additional support from the employer at any point, those can be discussed as part of the reviews to make sure that that's happening on an ongoing basis. So, as I've mentioned, your learners are going to be building their portfolio of assessment evidence. So this will be developed throughout the programme. So it's going to use a range of different assessment methods. So we've included all of those onto the laser system, and we'll be able to select from those which ones are relevant for each of the different modules. So it might be that they're creating some written work, or they are using products from their own job roles. So it might be something they've actually created throughout doing their job role that they'll be able to upload onto the e-portfolio system. It might be that they're given some assignments to do, or it could be observations that have taken place or witness testimony. So there's a whole host of different assessment options and methods that can be used, and they will all be uploaded onto the portfolio, so we can see that range of methods being demonstrated throughout the learner's journey. And as that gets uploaded, the IQA, the internal quality assurer, will carry out their interim and their summative sampling to make sure the standards are being met. And that means that anything that's being missed as they go along or doesn't quite meet the standards, the IQA can flag it early on rather than leaving everything to the back end when it's going to be too late to perhaps recreate some of that evidence or just top it up. And obviously that could end up in the learner getting demotivated. So we make sure that happens as we go through. So once the learner's completed all of their learning, they've demonstrated all the criteria through their assessment work and uploaded it to the portfolio, and everything's been signed off, your learner would then move on to the progression stage. So this is where we'd carry out an exit review with the learner, make sure that they've carried out the completion satisfaction survey so we can identify whether they were happy with their whole journey. And it gives us an opportunity then to discuss what the opportunities are for further learning and progression. So it might be that they want to progress from a level 3 qualification with us onto a level 5. It might be that there are opportunities for other qualifications that they could be working through as well. So this progression opportunity gives us that chance to discuss with the learner the journey that they've gone through, the progress they've made, and where they want to go to next, and for us to be able to assess the impact that the learning's actually had on that individual, because that's something that Ofsted are particularly interested in, is the impact that the learning is actually having on the learner's real life situations. So that's taken us through the key stages of the learner journey, and as we get into it, it'll all become a lot clearer, but hopefully this is something you can refer back to and see each of the different stages and what the elements are that are going to feed into that you need to have in place. So it's going to be a nice point of reference for future. So as we've gone through, I've mentioned a lot about the learner management system. So I'm going to take you on now to actually have a quick look at the learner management system. So we're going to touch very briefly today on how to create a learner, how the learners can actually access their learning materials, how you can get into the library and upload documents so that your learners can see additional teaching and learning materials that your assessors might want to share. I can show you how to access the guidance documents to support you with using the learner management system further. And we're going to touch on work plans and progress reviews today very briefly, but I'm going to take you through those again in further training so that it's fresh in your minds when you get to that stage. So in order to access the learner management system, you would log in to this URL here, and that would take you into the laser system for your centre. So if I make that full page, you should be able to see it. So when you go to the URL, your learners are going to be greeted with your login screen. You would click on to log in, and then input the username and password, which we will share with you for each individual. Cool. And once you log in, it would take you through to, here we go. There we go, I've been logged out a little bit too long. There we go. So once you log into your learning platform, it will take you in and you'll be greeted with your home screen where you can see how many active learners that you've got that you're supporting, how many staff members are set up. And from here, on the left-hand side, you've got your menu of all the different areas you can go into. So we're going to go into learners to start with. And from here, you'll be able to see all the learners that are registered with your centre. So in order to create a learner, it's nice and easy. All we're going to do is click on to add a new learner. And from here, you're going to input the key details. So for example, if I was setting myself up, we would have first name and surname. And then you would create a username. Now these are always follow the same pattern and we will share that pattern with you. But it would be, for your learners, it would be their first name, your company name, and then it would be learner. And then you would put in a unique email address to that learner. So let me pick this one here. We don't have to put in a funding provider at this stage. If and when we get to the stage where you are working with a funding provider, so the qualifications are funded, then we could put the provider in here. And then we would create a password. So again, we follow a set pattern for these, which is change me 123, and that will prompt the system to actually ask the learner to create their own password, which is unique to them for when they log in the first time. And that makes sure that we're keeping everything safe and secure. So once you've done that, you'd click on save, and that would create the learner on your home page here. So once you've done that, you would then click onto the learner in question, and then their details will come up. And this allows you to add a little more information about that learner. She says, so on the right hand side here, we have the edit button. So we edit the learner. And in here, we'll go through and you can see all the information we put in initially just to create the learner. And you would scroll down here to assignment. And this is where we assign them the course that they're going to be studying. So from the list, you would select the course that they're going to be studying. And then it will give you a list of relevant assessors, trainers that are available for this qualification. So you would allocate the trainer or the assessor to that learner. And then you would put in a qualification start date. So this is the date that you've agreed at your enrolment stage, and what the end date is going to be for that qualification. So this would be a year, 18 months in advance, whenever it's going to be. Once you've actually put the start and end date in, you can then go through and select a manager. So the managers should already be set up, but if they're not, then I'll show you where you go to create a manager for that learner, and then you would save their details. Once it's saved, you can scroll down further and you can see that you've got an opportunity to reset their password. So if they've locked themselves out, they can't reset it, then you can reset a password here. And if you change it back to change me 123, then again, it will prompt them to reset their password again next time they log in. And if we go down a little bit further, here you can see we can schedule the first progress review. So all you would do is work out when the first progress review is due, and you go through, set the date, and then save that. And that's all that's required to set your learner up for the first time. So once you've done all of that, your learners, as I say, will appear in this list on your front page. And again, as an admin, you can go in, you can select the learner and you can go in and view their details. Obviously, you'd log in as an assessor in order to support your learners. So the assessors can go in, click on a learner, and they can see all the relevant information. So if you've set a progress review, then that will pop up into here as an option under the progress review. And you can set information for the learner as to what they need to do by that progress review. And we've also got the work plan, so we can agree with the learner on a monthly basis. This is the work you need to be doing for the next month. This is where you need to be on your courses, in your qualifications, in terms of the evidence you're uploading, and so on and so forth. But as I say, we're going to go into this in a lot more detail once we actually get to that stage, so that it's nice and fresh in your memories at that point. Okay, so we've created a learner. So let's look at some of the other options. So if we click on the left-hand side here into the library, you can see here that we have the evidence all uploaded already for this particular one. So in your logins, I've created a centre documentation folder, and in there I will upload the PowerPoint for this that I'm doing now. So you'll be able to access all the learning materials from our standardisation session today. And you'll notice the documentation. So this is all the documentation for the approval process with the awarding body. It'll also be all the processes and the welcome pack that you'll use with your learners. So you can also see that it's nice and easy to actually set up the individual qualifications. So if you want to upload additional tutor resources to support a particular qualification, you can create a new folder and then upload the evidence into this. So very straightforward to do. For example, if I want to upload, say, this PowerPoint now, I could create a new folder, or I could upload an individual file. I can decide whether I want it to be for all users or just for assessors or just for learners to view, and whether it's for all courses. And then I would browse to the file that I want to upload. And then, oh, that's taking me back into the wrong one. There we go, it's having a little fit. There we are. So I can go in and I can select the PowerPoint or the folder or the documents that I want to upload. And then I would be able to actually upload those into here. So I just click on upload and then it would appear here. So it's very straightforward in order to upload documentation for your assessors to enhance what's already there. But that's going to work alongside the learning materials. So on the left-hand side, if we scroll down, you can see there's a lot of different categories here. But we're going to go into the courses. So as I say, we've already touched on the learners. If you needed to set up a manager, you can set up a manager from here. So you can see we have some already set up. But if you needed a new manager, you could set them up in here. I'm going to go into our courses now, so you get a feel for the actual course materials. So one of the courses we're delivering is going to be the level 3 in adult care. So if I select that one, you can see that this course is made up of 143 units, it says here. And these are the different learning outcomes that your learners are going to be working through. So if we select this first one here, it will take you into the learning materials. And you can see this is what your learners will be working on. So we have a tutorial video that the modules will start with, and then there'll be examples of the reading materials. So it might be particular things of note, it might be excerpts from books, it might be particular documents, or relevant information. So these will be uploaded there for your learner to click into. There's a presentation with some learning for them to work through. And that will be followed by a good practice example. So I'm going to just quickly play this so you can get an example of the types of videos that will be uploaded. So it might be a good practice example from the workplace so that they can see what they should be doing. It might be a video about a particular topic. So in this one, it's all around the communication workshop.
Communication difficulties are common within the health and social care sector. Losing the ability to speak or understand is frightening, and the frustration can lead to feelings of isolation.
There we go. So I won't play too much of that because I know the technology is a bit temperamental today. But once they've actually worked through the videos and the presentations, then there's some interactive quizzes for them to go through. So this is where you can check their understanding and test their knowledge. And then it gives you evidence opportunities. So this is where it cross-references into the standards for that unit. So they'll be able to click on these activities, carry out the tasks, and that should help generate evidence for their portfolio. And then if you want to stretch and challenge your learners, then there are options for extended learning. So some learners who might already have some knowledge in this area, you could put them into doing some of the stretch and challenge activities so that you're giving them additional areas to work on and develop their skills further. And for some of your learners who may be struggling, there's options in here that actually might support them, might give them more knowledge or experience in a particular area that you know that they're struggling with. So this is where you're going to find all the extended learning for that. And then your final section is going to be around think and challenge. So this is where it gives you additional areas for like case studies. So you can apply the knowledge that you've learned through the particular area to try and answer some of the situations and the scenarios that are given. So each of the units are going to have a very similar feel with the way that they're laid out, with the tutorial videos and the areas that they can work through. And as I say, on the work plans on a monthly basis, as an assessor, you'll be saying, oh, I want you to get through the whole of this module, or I want you to do this part of it and complete the interactive quiz, or carry out the evidence opportunities, whatever it might be. So you'll agree that on a monthly basis with your learner. And then obviously if they're on track or they're getting through that quickly, you can set additional targets. If they're struggling, then you maybe need to set smaller targets on a more regular basis to help that learner progress through. And then quarterly, so every 3 months, you'll have those larger progress reviews, which will review, are you on track to the qualification as a whole? How are you getting on with your learning in this? What additional help or support do you need? What more stretch and challenge can we provide you? So those are the key areas to get you started within the portfolio. The other section that I will just point out is this guidance section on the left. So in the guidance section, you'll see here, the system has already pre-uploaded key elements that are going to be helping you use the actual platform. So it might be how to access work plans, and that's from a learner perspective. It might be from an admin perspective, how you can add different elements, how you can set targets, how you can create your managers, adding in new learners, so what I briefly just talked through. So there's guidance documents, and also at the bottom they have little short videos that you can watch to help you work through particular areas like adding in new work plans, creating a new learner, uploading evidence. So this guidance section is useful as you start to find your feet and use the system that little bit more to help you find out how to do different things within the portfolio. So I think those are all the key areas that I wanted to go through with you today. We've gone through the approval process, the learner journey, and looked at that learner management system so you get a feel for everything. So I'm just going to now stop the recording, and then if we have any other questions, we can go through those together now.